Daf Yomi, Tractate Menachot, page 26. Today is 2/6 of 26. And today's daf is Menachot 26. How do you like that? February 6th is today. And today's daf is Menachot 26, and it's 2026. Top of the page with the words Tashima. Tashima, Dam Shinit Mazak, B'Shagik Rotze, B'Mezil Rotze. The Gemara suggests a refutation of Rav Shila's opinion based on the first Braita. Come in here. In the case of blood of an offering that became impure and a priest sprinkled it on the altar, if he did so unwittingly, the offering is accepted and achieves atonement for the owner of the offering. If he sprinkled the blood intentionally, the offering is not accepted. This contradicts Rav Shila's statement that even if the priest sprinkled the blood intentionally, it is accepted. The Gemara rejects this proof. According to Rav Shila, this is what the Braita is saying. In the case of blood that became impure and a priest sprinkled it, whether it was sprinkled unwittingly or intentionally, it was rendered impure unwittingly and it is accepted. But if it was rendered impure intentionally, then it is not accepted. New Mishnah. Nitmeu shirea nisrfu shirea avdu shirea kemidas Rabbi Eliezer Kishero Uchamidas Rabbi Yehoshua Pasulo. If, after the handful was removed, the remainder of the meal offering became ritually impure, or if the remainder of the meal offering was burned, or if the remainder of the meal offering was lost, according to the principle of Rabbi Eliezer, who says that with regard to an animal offering, the blood is fit for sprinkling, even if there is no meat that can be eaten, the meal offering is fit, and the priest burns the handful. But according to the principle of Rabbi Yehoshua, who says that with regard to an animal offering, the blood is fit for sprinkling only if there is meat that can be eaten, it is unfit, and the priest does not burn the handful, as the handful serves to render permitted the remainder. Talmud. Zog the Heilige Talmud. Amarav. Vehu. Shenitmeu. Kol shireha. Avul mikzas shireha lo. With regard to the Mishnah's statement that according to Rabbi Yehoshua, the meal offering is unfit if its remainder is rendered impure, Rav says, and this is the halacha, only when all of its remainder became pure. But if only a part of its remainder became pure, the meal offering is not unfit. Kasal kedaitoch nitma'in. Avdu sarif la. Maika savar. Ika savar shiora milsahi. Afilu avud besaruf nami. Ika savar shiora la'av milsahi. Venitma. Mai taima dimratzatzitz. Ihachi kol shira navi. The Gemara comments, if it enters your mind that Rav holds, then only if a part of the remainder became impure, then yes, the meal offering is fit. But if part of the remainder was lost or burned, then the meal offering is not fit. The Gemara asks, what does Rav hold? If he holds that what remains is significant, so that even if a portion of the remainder cannot be eaten, the handful is still sacrificed to render the rest permitted, then why would this not also be the halacha, even if a part of the remainder was lost or burned? Alternatively, if he holds that what remains is not significant, and the Gemara interjects, and accordingly, what is the reason that the handful is sacrificed if a part of the remainder became impure? It is because the front plate affects acceptance for the impurity. If that is so, then even if all the remainder became impure, the handful should still be sacrificed. The Gemara explains, actually, he holds, excuse me one moment here. The Gemara explains, actually, he holds that what remains is significant, and just as when a part of the remainder became impure, but the offering is still fit, the rest of the remainder is sacrificed, the same is true with regard to a case where a part of the remainder was lost or burned, and the reason that he stated his halacha, specifically in a case to where it became impure, is that he employed the terminology of the beginning of the Mishnah, which discusses a case where the remainder became impure. כדתניא רבי שאומר, כל הזבחים שבתורה שנשתער מהן כזייס בוסר או כזייס חלב זוירק אס אדם. Rava's statement accords with the opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua, as it is taught in a Braita. Rabbi Yehoshua says, with regard to all the offerings in the Torah from which there remains an olive bulk of meat that is fit to be eaten, or an olive bulk of fat that is fit to be sacrificed on the altar, the priest sprinkles the blood. Similarly, if a part of the remainder can be eaten, the handful is still sacrificed, as the status of the remainder relative to the handful corresponds to the status of the meat relative to the blood. Kachatzi zayis basar, kachatzi zayis chelev, eino izoyrek es hadam. ובאויל אפילו כחצי זייס בשר וחצי זייס חלב זורק את הדם מפני שכולה כליל ובמנחה אפילו כולה קיימת לא יזרוק. The Gemara cites the continuation of the Braita. If all that remains is a half an olive bulk of meat and a half an olive bulk of fat, the priest does not sprinkle the blood. This is because the half olive bulk of meat and the half olive bulk of fat do not combine to form one olive bulk, since the former is eaten and the latter is sacrificed on the altar. And with regard to a burnt offering, even if all that was left was a half an olive bulk of meat and an olive bulk of fat, the priest sprinkles the blood because it is consumed on the altar in its entirety. Since both the meat and the fat are sacrificed on the altar, they combine to form one olive bulk. And with regard to a meal offering, although all that remains pure, the priest shall not sprinkle the blood. Okay. Mincha maya vidita, Amar of Papa, Minchas nesochim, so kedaitach. The Gemara questions the last ruling of the Braita. What is the meaning of the meal offering doing here? No, what is the mention of a meal offering doing here? The discussion is about sprinkling blood, which is not relevant in the case of a meal offering. Rav Papa said the meal offering mentioned is the meal offering that accompanies libations that accompany animal offerings. It could enter your mind to say, since this meal offering accompanies the animal offering, it is comparable to the offering itself. And therefore, if the offering became impure, but the meal offering remained pure, the blood of the offering is sprinkled due to the remaining meal offering. To counter this, the Brisa teaches us that this is not the halacha. Mino hanimili. Rabbi Yochanan b'shum Rabbi Ishmael matuba b'shum Rabbi Yehoshua ben Chananya. Very interesting. I should mention this here, that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Chananya has not showed up in a while. And someone just mentioned something last night about a conversation between Rabbi Yehoshua ben Chananya and I think the Roman Caesar's daughter, or something like that. It's in Chulin 68, Samach Amud Aleph. And I'm seeing Rabbi Yehoshua ben Chananya right now, and it's very interesting. The Gemara returns to its discussion of the halacha that if only a kazayas of the fat remains, the priest sprinkles the blood of the offering. From where is this matter derived? Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Ishmael, and there are those who determine that it was stated in the name of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Chananya. The verse states, and the priest shall sprinkle the blood against the altar of the Lord at the door of the tent of meeting, and he shall make the fat smoke for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Leviticus 17, verse 6. The verse never mentions the meat, but only the fat, indicating that the blood is sprinkled even if there is no ritually pure meat, but only fat. The Gemara asks, and we found a source for the halacha that the priest sprinkles the blood only if fat remains. From where do we derive that the priest sprinkles the blood if all that is left is the lobe of the liver or the two kidneys, which are also sacrificed on the altar? The Gemara answers halacha that the priest sprinkles the blood. In that case, is derived from that which is taught at the end of the Brisa, and with regard to a meal offering, although all of it remains pure, the priest shall not sprinkle the blood. This teaches that it is in the case of a meal offering that the priest shall not sprinkle the blood, as the meal offering is not part of the animal, but if the lobe of the liver or the two kidneys remain, the priest sprinkles the blood. Minalan. Okay, we're going to pick up the pace here. Minalan. Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara asks, from where do we derive this halacha? The Gemara answers that Rabbi Yochanan himself says, the verse states, for a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Leviticus 17, verse 6, this teaches that the blood is sprinkled whenever anything that you offer up on the altar for a pleasing aroma remains. This includes anything burned on the altar. Because of the Gemara notes that it was necessary to write fat in that verse, and it was necessary to write for a pleasing aroma. As if the merciful one had written only fat, I would say that if fat remains, yes, the priest sprinkles the blood. But if only the lobe of the liver or the two kidneys remain, since they are not as significant as the fat, the blood is not sprinkled. Therefore, the merciful one wrote for pleasing aroma. And if the merciful one had written only for pleasing aroma, I would say that it includes even a meal offering brought with libations that accompany animal offerings. Therefore, the merciful one wrote fat to teach that this halakha applies only to sacrificial parts of the animal, but not to accompanying libations and meal offerings. New Mishnah. That's the whole Mishnah. A handful of a meal offering that was not sanctified in the service vessel is unfit, and Rabbi Shimon deems it fit. If the priest burned the handful of a meal offering twice, meaning in two increments, it is fit. Gemara. Zog Rabbi Yehuda brei Rabbi Chia by Tamed Rabbi Shimon Amekra Kodesh Kodeshim Ki Kachatas Ucheasham Balu Dabia Dachatos of Dabia Amin Kachatos Bichli over the Bismol Kasham. Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Chia, says, what is the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon? The verse states with regard to a meal offering, it is most holy, as the sin offering and as the guilt offering. Leviticus 6:10. Rabbi Shimon derives from here that the handful of the meal offering may be placed on the altar in the manner of the blood of either a sin offering or a guilt offering. If a priest comes to perform the sacrificial rites of a meal offering with his hand, as one performs the sprinkling of the blood of a sin offering, which is performed with the priest's right index finger, he must perform its rites with his right hand, like the sin offering. If he performs the sacrificial rites with a vessel, as one performs the sprinkling of the blood of a guilt offering, whose blood is sprinkled from a vessel on the altar, and whose sprinkling may be performed with the priest's left hand, he may perform its rites with his left hand, like the guilt offering. From Yani Amar, Kivan Shikum Tzomikle Shores Malem Maktiro Afilu Behemiano Afilu Bemikida Shel Cheres Menachot Yitzchak Amar Kolmaidim Bikomet Shitaun Kiddush. And Rabbi Yanai says, according to Rabbi Shimon, there are no restrictions on the manner in which the handful is sacrificed. As one priest has removed the handful from a service vessel, he may bring it up and burn it, even if he placed it in his belt or even in an earthenware vessel. Or Nachman Yitzchak says, all can see that the handful requires sanctification in a service vessel before it is sacrificed. Okay. Meisvei hekter chalav meivon beitzim shelam bein biyad bein mechli bein yamin bein bismol ksherim. Hakoin beis veketoires velavoin meshelam bein biyad bein mechli bein yamin bein bismol ksherim. Tiyuv to Rabbi Yehuda v'Rei Chira. The Gemara raises an objection to statement Rabbi Yehuda, son of Rabbi Chia, from the Brayta Seftes Vachim 1:11, with regard to the burning of the fats, the limbs, and the wood that were brought up to the altar, that the priest brought them up to the altar, whether they by hand or by vessel, whether with the right hand or with the left hand, they are fit. With regard to the handful and the incense and the frankincense, that the priest brought them up to the altar, whether by hand or with a vessel, whether with the right hand or with the left hand, they are fit. The Gemara suggests this is a conclusive refutation of the opinion of Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, who stated that if the handful is sacrificed by hand, it must be sacrificed only with the right hand. Amar lach Rabbi Yehuda b'rei Rabbi Chia, tzaddik katani biyad b'yamin mechli bein b'yamin bein b'smal. The Gemara responds, Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia, could say to you that the Tana of the Brayta teaches it disjunctively, and the statement should be understood as follows: if these terms are brought up by hand, with the right hand or with a vessel, whether with the right hand or with the left, they are fit. Tashema komatzo shlo michlei shares, kitcha shlo michlei shares, v'hela v'hiti shlo michlei shares pasul. Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon machshin be'matan kli. The Gemara attempts to refute the opinion of Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak that all concede that the handful requires sanctification in the service vessel before it is sanctified. Come in here. That which is taught in Brayta, if the priest removed the handful, but not from a service vessel, and sanctified it, but not in a service vessel, and brought it up and burned it, but not in a service vessel, then it is unfit. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon deem it fit. In a case where the handful had been placed in any type of vessel, this contradicts Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak's claim that all concede that the handful must be sanctified in a service vessel. The Gemara responds, say, according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, from the point when the handful has been placed in a service vessel and sanctified and onward, it is no longer necessary to take in a service vessel to the altar to sacrifice it. Therefore, the Brisa does not contradict with Nachman bar Yitzchak's statement. Rabbi Shimon Omer, the Gemara suggests another refutation of Nachman bar Yitzchak's opinion from a Brisa, Tosefta 4:15. Come in here. And the rabbis say the handful requires sanctification in a service vessel. How is this sanctification performed? The priest removes the handful from a service vessel and sanctifies it in a service vessel and brings it up and burns it in a service vessel. Rabbi Shimon says once the handful is removed from a service vessel, the priest may bring it up and burn it even if it is not in a service vessel, and this is sufficient for it. This Brisa demonstrates that, in contrast to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's statement, Rabbi Shimon does not hold that the handful must be sanctified in a service vessel. Ema, kevan shekamatzo v'kedra b'chlei shaves, ma'alo v'ktirei v'dayoy. The Gemara answers say that according to Rabbi Shimon, once the priest removes the handful and sanctifies it in a service vessel, he may bring it up and burn it, and this is sufficient for it. Tashema, kamas b'yamina v'nasan b'smailoi, yachzel yiminoi b'smailoi. The Gemara suggests another proof coming here. If the priest removed the handful with his right hand and put it in his left hand, he shall return it to his right hand. If the handful was in his left hand, and now continue on to 26b at the top. Possible. And he intended, if the handful was in his left hand, and he intended to partake of the meal offering in an improper manner, whether outside its designated area or beyond its designated time, the offering is not valid, but there is no liability to receive karet if one partakes of it. We'll continue, God willing, tomorrow night with the next Amud.